I think, gentlemen, we are apparently live. So, Assalamualaikum, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, Sunday morning, gentlemen. Fireside chat, park launch. Just want to kick things off first, perhaps by just introducing, perhaps not ourselves, but maybe each other, and laying, the layout for the call. So let me perhaps go in a clockwise order. Heather was known to me, or the family was known to me since a while back, but introduced in 2018-19. Sehat was the first e-pharmacy in Pakistan, Augment Care, the first telemedicine provider in Pakistan, and therefore they integrated into a digital health provider. Heather, again, first time we met last year, or about 18 months back. Yeah, I would say a lot of similar thoughts, different way of tackling things for sure. But I've really enjoyed getting to understand your in-depth, knowledge of the healthcare sector, obviously with your familial heritage in the space, and how you're looking to disrupt it as well.
Great. And so how do you want to do this, Salaal? Do you want me to introduce you?
Let's do it that way. Let's
All right.
take it there.
I think I met Salaal like less than a year ago, but so brilliant, young, and now leading JS Group's VC arm. I've also known Heather for a bit. Before Ailaaj was called Ailaaj. So we're friends from a while, and it just happens to be that JS Group has also, deployed capital into Heather's business. But I think we've been using each other as a sounding board now for many years, actually.
And somehow we never talked about investors. We always talked about the businesses.
Yeah, true that. And I don't even think I introduced JS Group to you. And just for context, for those of you who don't know, JS was the LP behind our seed investment into Bykea, and have been great supporters since in the last 4 years. And 4 years seems like an eon now, in particularly given the pace of change and changing investment environment in Pakistan.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think you and I have been around for a while, because we're not one of the kids, right? We're just bubbling up with new ideas and raising bootloads of capital. I think we were early, which had its advantages and its disadvantages, right? But yeah, so that's a quick intro of how I know these guys. And just for context, I think we're friends beyond basically a JS connection as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, gents.
Guys, thanks for the intros. I think we've talked a lot about myself, but I mean, Muneeb, I got to know when I moved to Pakistan. I made it a point to get to know Muneeb because he had done some tremendous things at Daraz and Rocket Internet, and he had just started his journey at Bykea. And we've learned a lot from each other throughout the years. I think there's always something new. Every time we sit down, there's always something new I personally learned from Muneeb. And Salaal and I have gotten to know each other, a bit better since the JS investment relationship. And Salaal is originally from Lahore, but I think he spent a lot of time in the region in venture-backed internet startups as well. He doesn't talk about it much, but he should. He's been on this side of the table for a little while.
I have indeed, and I guess in a similar environment to where Pakistan is, today, maybe 2016 UAE. So I think we have that overlap as well. I believe that, I think that perhaps, gents, thank you for the intros. Maybe, I can take a second and talk about JS, maybe, if that's cool. So for those that, because again, the audience will be international here, as well as people that want to know us in Pakistan. Founded in 1970s and has grown to become a financial services conglomerate. We operate in 8 different jurisdictions with about 23,000 employees, about $2 to $3 billion of revenue, predominantly minority, secondary, and buyout investments in Pakistan financial services. And I look after, you can say, the high risk portfolio, which is the most fun portfolio, which is obviously venture capital. And we've been investing in Pakistan since a while now. And yeah, we've seen this ecosystem mature. I'm a relatively, you can say, a recent part of the JS journey, but I've been seeing the ecosystem evolve. What I want to kick things off with is a definition that I recently glanced across. It was a definition of entrepreneurship that I found very interesting, and I would like you gentlemen to perhaps give us some of your thoughts on it. So I read that entrepreneurship is defined as perhaps the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources control. And that gave me a moment to think about. So when you hear that, how do you see
without regard to what?
Resource control. So you're not, yes. Yes. So how do you think about that? And this is Mike Lyons from Stanford. So it's the Stanford way of defining entrepreneurship. How does that sit with you?
Heather, you want to take
doing more with less, right? I think that's what it's coming down to, doing more with less. And you've seen this throughout the years. Even corporates have this sort of attitude in certain sort of new business units. And I think, yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is the ultimate risk level, right? As you go down the sort of, return on your time, entrepreneurship is the riskiest piece of it, because you're trying to do so much with so many limited resources.
Yeah, so I think so I think if we're talking specifically about tech entrepreneurship or tech startups, you're no different to entrepreneurs at the turn of the century when they were trying to create automobiles, or late last century trying to make things out of electricity or make electricity run, right? And there are a lot of people at it, right? And I think a lot of people have been at it in most part of the Western world, and now the rest of the world, first Asia and now even the subcontinent, people are getting inspired to build things which will make your current way of doing things more efficient. And if by resources you primarily mean you're trying to be efficient, yeah, absolutely agree, right? And clearly, because many of the things that you're trying to do may or may not have hit product markets, fit, or may not have, hit that critical mass. You are not sure how long it's going to take. So, for example, if you went back a few centuries, if you were building, rails, in different parts of the United States, like, you were hoping that you would have enough traffic on those rails to monetize those rails. Right? Yeah. And I think many of us are trying to build these rails. I think all of us have different motivations, right? So I think some of us come from a inventor mindset, and some of us come from a trader mindset. You know, you know, I am no one to say who's better, right? Because the reason why anyone is deploying capital or trusting you with capital is for a return, and I get it. But you also have to recognize that many of the people who are motivated to build cutting edge stuff or things that will drive change may not necessarily be motivated purely from a capitalistic perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely true. But before we go into your product market fit and those things in terms of investment criteria, etc., I want to start off with Rails. So the Rails for entrepreneurship in Pakistan. How have you seen that evolve? Where did it stand when you entered the market, Muneeb, in the technology space, and Heather, you? And where do you think we lag? Is it an economic, macro? How do you see the ecosystem?
So, listen, I mean, I think different people are building different things, right? I think what has interested me particularly is building Rails that would involve a lot of people, whose impact would be on a lot of people within Pakistan. And so I think the foundational requirement for that is bandwidth and internet, right? So about a decade ago, it was access to relatively high-speed internet on laptops, right? But I think the last few years, and of course it's been happening in the West for a while, but now it's on mobile devices. So just having the infrastructure for high-speed internet on mobile devices, without that, there is no business for tech, right? At least in Pakistan today, because of course there was Microsoft, which was making software which didn't necessarily need the internet. If you're using Excel, if you're using Word, you don't need the internet to essentially use that software. But I think the kind of software that we're trying to build now requires the rails of the internet. So I think that was required. I think 4 years ago when I started Bykea, there were no rails, I would say, for raising capital either, right? Now, fortunately, and I would say strangely, because of COVID, because of lockdown, because America's printed $7 trillion, right? There's access to capital from every Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? Who's got a few $1 million here and there that they don't want to leave in the debt markets, right? And they want to deploy it in something that's going to give them a better return, against some risk, of course, but give them some better return. And so yeah, so I think, internet, capital, cloud storage, and just the accessibility of software developers, I think without that, we wouldn't have businesses. We wouldn't have the businesses we want to build today.
Very interesting. Heather, what are your thoughts?
I agree with a lot of that, Muneeb, but I would add on a couple more things. I mean, for me, from my lens, a couple of years ago, I was coming in from the Middle East, and back then there was hardly anyone who would support someone with an idea coming from the Middle East back to Pakistan. I think that's totally changed. So you're right, that the access to capital and the speed at which you can access that capital has totally changed. And that's nice to see. But on sort of the engineers that we're talking about in Pakistan, I think something that's really excited me over the past 12 months is the level of exposure the engineers in Pakistan have gotten recently. I mean, the type of work they're doing, the problem statements they're dealing with, they're now out there building products, some for the very first time. And I think that's exciting because it only means that the next product they work on will be even better. And then at some point, all of us will benefit from that. So I think talent has really changed from 4 years ago as well.
Yeah, Heather, you're spot on. What I believe is that the $300 million expected this year in terms of capital is mainly as a factor of digital penetration, as Muneeb has said, and not due to perhaps, and a lot of good talent and good jobs being created in Pakistan because of COVID and impact to neighboring states, perhaps worse impacted. But I still believe that there's a big delta because we're still, not really we still need to create a knowledge economy, right? And not by distributing laptops or by training people with software skills, but really informing the law. Like, the biggest worry that we have for technology companies is where's their intellectual property line, right? And everyone wants an IS audit in a safer jurisdiction than a developing market. So while we thoroughly appreciate the work done by the state bank, which you gentlemen have referred to, which allowed for capital flows restrictions to be delimited to a certain extent, I think that needs to translate also to our tax authorities, especially for local individuals, not just foreign investors. And secondarily, also, we need to have better policy going through our houses of parliament. Like, to give you a small minor example, we have, after 2016, just updated our act for social media companies, right? And I don't know if you gentlemen read the framework, but this is still coming from, PECRA, which was making it very difficult and making it extremely heavily penalized and criminalized without really explaining fair use. They have basically used this to define different forms of social media before everything online was considered as a internet company, basically. But I still think we have a lot of work to be done and informing the regulators. But we're on the right path. We're on the right journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I think the state bank is making a lot of the right steps. I think they're taking a lot of the right steps. I do think that I think other departments are probably not working in tandem, though, right? Whether that is, whether that is the taxation authority, the Federal Board of Revenue, or whether that is NADRA, which is the National ID database, or whether it's the telecom, authority. I don't think everyone's working in tandem. And the reason I think it's important to work in tandem is, one department can't move the country forward, right? So, let's take an example, right, of the Pakistan Telecom Authority, right? If the Pakistan Telecom Authority does not penalize or block off mobile numbers associated with financial fraud, right, then the kind of recourse a financial regulator can take is very limited in a country that is largely unbanked, right? Similarly, the state bank may try to open up, capital proceeds to coming into the country, right? But, it doesn't work this way that you just open up proceeds to come one way and they're not allowed to go out the other way, right? I mean, one of the reasons why people set up holding companies in countries like Singapore or the Netherlands or the United Kingdom or UAE or Seychelles, or Mauritius, right, is because moving capital in and out is seamless, right? And I think the reason why the state is kind of paranoid is that we have certain structural problems where we're unable very similar to the tail end of the Mughal Empire to collect taxes. And if you can't collect taxes, you are, I mean, ultimately, आपके साथ भी वही होगा जो कि Mughal Empire के साथ हुआ, right? They just ran out of money. And most people don't get why they collapsed. They collapsed because they ran out of money, right? कर्जे किस एक लिमिट तक कर्जे लोगे, उसके बाद आपका वही हाल होगा जो कि लेबनान का हाल, right? So I think एक वो issue है जो कि solve करना चाहिए. और दूसरा ये कि capital को आपको free flowing, you need to enable capital to move in and out. Without that, I think people will continue to hold and park most of their capital overseas. So I know a lot of, example, manufacturers, वो तो आधे से ज़्यादा पैसे पाकिस्तान मंगवाते ही नहीं है, you know.
Yep.
तो वो पाकिस्तान में capital आएगा ही नहीं अगर आप उसको आने जाने ना दो.
It's not just manufacturers, right? It's half of our technology industry. It's anyone who's doing any sort of exports. They're thinking twice about how much do I need to keep inside the country and be efficient with that.
To translate Muneeb's frustration for those of you that are, our international guests, what he's trying to say is we have a Hotel California policy. You can check in, but you can never leave when it comes to capital. And we, the youth of Pakistan, are globally mobile people, and we would like this to be perhaps aligned with the West.
No, but Muneeb, how did that whole implementation of the tax repatriation or repatriation of investment go? I remember Bykea was leading the charge on
So the state bank has kind of approved that. But I think other things that need to be solved is actually the Federal Bureau of Revenue, which is responsible for taxes, needs to recognize and also be a little more lenient towards, for example, artificial gains, right, on paper, right? Now, if you have artificial gains on paper and you're going to be slapped with heavy taxes on those artificial gains, because there's no liquidity, right? Unrealized, right? That is something that needs to be solved, because, and when I think one of the things that the state is still not solving is they're not solving for capital gains on property, right? While they're trying to solve for capital gains on everything else. So लोगों का जो perception investment का इस मुल्क में ना वो ये property, right? And it is the worst thing to deploy capital in, because it doesn't generate dollars for you. It doesn't generate anything for you, right?
Yeah.
It's just basically just funny money, I think property is funny money.
Muneeb, please don't put memes out there.
Yeah.
But I like it. I like where you just went. I like where you just went. For our viewers, the Federal Board of Revenue is a tax collection authority in Pakistan. Employs 5,000 people, where in a country where 93% of the taxes are collected indirect. So 7% of the tax of the country is collected direct. This is last numbers 2016-17. And the authority is employing 5,000 people to check unrealized returns, as they call it, on our dear friends. So this is definitely not the way to do business. I think Heather perhaps agrees. But please.
For me, I mean, when you're talking about FBR, I'm in different jurisdictions, it's pretty clear, right? Especially in North America, you've got a Delaware C Corp. You're going to do that 409A valuation once a year. Everyone who's holding options will fall into some sort of tax bracket because of it, and you can move on from this. I don't think anyone's thought about these things yet over here. I mean, and I think that's where you're coming from, Muneeb, that anyone who holds shares in a company like Bykea, what sort of impact will that have on them from a tax perspective? So I think, look, the State Bank has taken the first couple of steps. It's pretty important steps, pretty big, important steps that were taken. And I'm sure we'll get there. The amount of attention that's now come on to the venture industry or the venture internet industry is tremendous from the government now. So the momentum's there. With people like you who keep on chipping away at their walls, we'll get there.
Thanks for that. I think, by the way, there are people basically asking questions around valuation, particularly valuation, valuations that are sort of playing out today. So I think for most people, I'm sure many people who are budding entrepreneurs, they're trying to understand what a valuation really means, right? And fundamentally, a valuation is what people peg the price to be. So, for example, why is a plot of property in defense worth, let's say, 1 crore rupees? It's worth 1 crore rupees when someone is willing to buy that property or trade that property at 1 crore rupees, right? There may be people on that street who say, oh, why did my neighbor sell for 1 crore rupees? Or why was my neighbor able to finance their house on 1 crore rupees of a property valuation when my valuation is only 20 lakh rupees, right? And so I think the answer to that is when are you selling or when are you financing that mortgage, right? So timing really matters. So I think when there is a lot of capital available, right, and there are fewer properties to deploy that capital into, the price of that property will particularly rise. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I think if you want to understand how some of these valuations work, the math is kind of simple, right? So what you do is, let's say your revenue is 100 rupees, right? Or 100, right? And assume that your commission or your trade or your margin on that is 20%. Right? So if it's 20%, you've got 20 as your net revenue or your profit contribution 1, and that's your real revenue, right? And then what you do is you multiply that by 12 to get your annualized net revenue. And then someone would be willing to give you a multiple on your annualized revenue, whether that multiple is a multiple of 10, 20, 30.
Then, sorry, Muneeb, then you go to a VC who says we discount that right there, and then you do what you're saying. Please continue.
Yeah. But I think you'd be surprised. Like 9 out of 10 people who are building businesses don't know this math. It's really surprising to me, right? And of course, you guys are, one of you obviously leads a venture arm, and another one has a lot of exposure. But you'd be surprised that most people don't know this math. And so some people may come around and say, okay, so why is my neighbor's property valued at 30 times annual revenue, and why is my property valued at only 5 times revenue, right? Annualized revenue? And I don't think anyone can give you an answer there, right? It's really what people believe you can deliver, right? And some are more conservative. Like, for example, Salaal comes in. Salaal will be like, no, I don't think you can trade. I don't think you can grow that fast. I don't think you can reduce that multiple from 30 down to like 5 in the next 4 years or 3 years or 2 years. And then it becomes a negotiation game.
Yeah.
But I would say, in this, if you're saying that a lot of people don't understand or have never encountered this math before, I feel like sometimes when people reach out and they ask for advice, they're thinking everything is a straightforward negotiation. What they're not realizing is there are some fundamentals at play. And I think that's the difficult part, right? How do you anchor a fundamental around this whole conversation? What is negotiation and what is logic that prevails here? I think that's something that a lot of people have come to me and asked me questions about.
Heather, that's a great question and a great thought. And Muneeb, thank you for laying this out. So, again, when you're describing that plot of land, it's all based upon some level of validation, what your multiplier is, right? And that multiplier can be based upon, what is DHA or what is the location or et cetera of that land. So in venture capital, obviously you have three metrics. You have the growth, you have the potential, but again, because it's technology, the capital efficiency. And then you're using those three metrics to compare to companies in the similar technology vertical. And then you have different things to compare them to, right? You could compare them to, if you're a very risky, high risk investor, to public listed multiples in the United States, which are, or private equity multiples for technology companies, SaaS companies in the United States, which are very high right now, again, because of low interest rates. So I think that's what's happened in Pakistan is kind of mirrored what's happened, on a global level. In the past, since 2013, we've seen, deal values go up 8x. We've seen the number of investments rounds go up about 2 to 3x. Most is concentrated in early stage VC, so angel seed, and so on. And then the exits are not really increasing at the same level. So you've seen about a 1.5x increase, 1.5 to 2x increase in the number of exits, and predominantly through M&A activity. So how do you guys see that playing out in Pakistan now? First, about where we stand this year with the valuations, and then later on.
Yes, I think, listen, I think the question is, are valuations realistic? Listen, I mean, someone's willing to price them, right? I mean, someone is willing to
supply and demand thing, right? So supply is crazy right now in terms of capital.
Exactly. There's a lot of money chasing very few companies who have shown some level of traction or whose leadership they can believe in. That's what it boils down to. And if people have been able to convince investors to deploy capital into their project, all the power to them. The question, however, you don't win by raising a lot of capital. So for example, a few years ago, a lot of capital was raised in micro-mobility, so scooters, but what went off it? Nothing, right? Then a lot of money was raised for bus transport. What went off it? Nothing, right? So sometimes you have to not really look at what is happening elsewhere, and go down to the fundamentals and look at your own business and figure out whether your own business is something that is a bit of a fad, or is it something that is long-term? Now, there's nothing wrong in building a business which is a fad. I'll also say that. I mean, if your personality is a trading personality, then and you're building to immediately flip and sell, then that's great. And so many times people are building to flip and sell regional businesses because it's easier to flip and sell regional businesses to another portfolio company. And so if that is what excites you, great, right? I'm sure that's what excites most investors, because I mean, while a lot of investors say they really care about businesses, they care about returns, right? So it's founders that care about businesses, truly and intrinsically. So then the question that begs is, you know, if you are not in the quick trade business and you are in the business of building a long-term company, is there an opportunity for an exit? Well, there may be, sure, there can be. I mean, but ultimately your goal should be that you should build a big enough and large enough business, one, you know, that can generate enough economic value, right? To have people give you capital if you can convince them. And if you cannot convince them to give you capital, then you have to make it profitable to generate your own cash flow, right? I mean, a lot of people like, I don't understand these businesses. They don't make a lot of money. Like, I believe in a business that generates positive cash flow. Well, sure. That's because no one believes that you will be able to, you know, give them the kind of growth and return. And so if you want to like survive on the crumbs of your own cash flow, great, okay? But the reason we raise capital is to build something very quickly into something fairly valuable. And then if we can attract capital from overseas, right? Why not? Because you have to realize how money is made. Money is printed, right? Like the US dollar is something that America prints. Right? It's not backed by gold, right? And so if you can attract more of that digital dollar to be converted into real economic value, great.
You know, I'm going to add to Muneeb's point with a small story. So once upon a time, my previous life was on a same journey that Muneeb just described, that let's go be part of a company whose sole purpose is let's scale this up really fast. Let's get into as many countries as possible. Because, and this was a company, it was a health tech company. I was an early employee. And we were on a very similar operating model to ZocDoc.com. ZocDoc.com had just raised over $160 million with a mandate to go global. We were in the Middle East. And we said, oh, they're not going to come to the Middle East for a couple of years. It's going to take them time. There's a lot of localization that's required to be able to scale up in the Middle East. Let's go do that for them. And the hope was that we go and scale this up and we'll be able to strike a deal with them, you know, in 12 to 18 months. So we went out building up this business. We started, you know, burning a lot, you know, using growth capital to scale up fast. We launched in Jordan, we launched in Egypt, we launched in Morocco, as well as the UAE. And fast forward 12 or 14 months, ZocDoc messed up their Brazil launch. Their board asked them, please don't go global. You are not geared up to do this. You know, you had a whole plan to go into India as well. Don't do it. And we sat there thinking, oh my God, what do we do? Now we got to turn this into a cash efficient business. Now we got to make ourselves sustainable somehow. So we started slashing straight away. We shut down Jordan for the next 8 months. We trimmed wherever we needed to. And each company really has its own evolution. And you can set out to do one thing and that can change really fast on you as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Heather. I'm also conscious, thank you, but also conscious of the time and we do have some questions. So let's maybe tick by addressing them. And just leaning on to perhaps one of your points, because that reminds me of so why we invested in Ailaaj and in Bykea. And I think when we've gone through this internally, we look at 8 different things. Both of you had the same match on 6 out of 7. And these are I'm going to keep it very high level. So starting off on the outset, filling an institutional void in an emerging market. So providing a basic economic need, not fashion e-commerce, not sound streaming, cloud stuff, but at the point that you entered the market, 2016 early days for the Pakistani ecosystem, just 1 exit or 2 exits at that point. So that was pivotal. Then the second thing, obviously the founders and the experience that you have. So again, Muneeb is a specialist in e-commerce, Heather in health tech, Heather also in ops, Muneeb in ops as well. And then obviously with the third thing being at the similar stages. I think we invested in both companies at a very similar stage. Slightly structure was a bit different. Again, with the merger in Ailaaj happening in parallel between the two, obviously, sister companies. I think, geared towards a tailored business model, but with unit economics and capital efficiency at its core, right? So Heather's business, PC2 positive, on the e-coms, Bykea, again, profitable in 2-3 major cities, I believe. So the right point and place to actually invest to grow the business. Then we just have a stage-wise metric, which is similar to your annualized run rate. And that's more of a ability for us to understand whether it's the right time for us. So, for JS, when we invest, we like to add some value to the company as well, beyond just cutting the check. And that only works at a specific stage. And that stage sits somewhere between, a $1 to $5 million raise. So we're writing the first check to prepare you for your international growth, or for your next fundraisers as well. So I think that was something I wanted to answer. Yeah.
I'll add to that. I mean, listen, I think what most people may not be aware of is that JS is perhaps the only, I would say, financial services business in Pakistan that has been investing in technology ideas for a while. Actually, we just recently heard about one of the largest banks in the country dabbling, and I would say literally just dabbling, in equity investments. Otherwise, they would never really look into equity or startup or tech investments. Everyone would just worry about debt, right? Just karze de do, but ideally will be karze to the government de do, because that's where the money was. So no one in the financial services sector was willing to take a bet on the future of this country. And I think I'll tell you, 4 years ago when JS took the bet as an LP to deploy capital into Bykea, it was a very risky bet because it was just an idea. But I think, the idea was proposed by someone who had a little bit of credibility building businesses in the past. And capital was deployed when we were able to show a minimum viable product that we could deploy capital into. But I think even today, if you ask me, of all the banks in this country or the financial services businesses in this country, how many have deployed, I don't know, like $5, $7, $10 million into startups in the last few years? I can't even name anyone beyond JS Group, So I may be wrong, but I can't name anyone, right?
It's not easy. That's why we call it ecosystem development. When we started at the bank. But no, on a serious note, I think Muneeb, you're far too kind. But there are obviously a lot of other business groups that have partnered and deployed.
But who? But who? Right? Like a lot of the like there may be one punt or two, but like I haven't really seen like back-to-back investments coming from a financial services sector. Like the void is today being filled by international capital being deployed into funds managed by local Pakistani fund managers, right? And whether that is
and a lot of them first-time fund managers, I think. Yeah,
absolutely, right? But if you talk about local capital, like
Right.
as an institution, I mean, sure, there are a lot of small people as individuals who may have deployed capital, but as institutions, I actually don't know of really anyone like who's deployed more than $5 million cumulatively, like in the financial services space.
No, keep on.
I'm sorry, I think we have something on the line. Yeah, Muneeb, you're right. 88 different unique investors from, we looked at half of the year, 53 were international VCs, 13 local, you can say, managers, etc. We were the only bank. And we didn't just deploy from the bank, obviously, as well. We do family office investments. And we have structured a VC fund now, which will come to market first half of next year. And we'll be deploying more actively from there. And it's
yeah. And what a lot of people don't understand is, like, if you talk about Islamic financing should be equity, right? And all the banks in this country are only interested in loan shorting people, right? Mostly the government.
Yeah. You're right.
It's no different. It's no different to the how like the Medicis and how back in Florence and Italy, they used to lend to the Pope, right? Same principle applies.
I change what works.
Yeah. Heather, were you the one?
No, come on. The Medicis and all of them supported Leonardo and who else, right? So they brought about innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, they brought about creativity. Obviously, जब आपके पास इतने पैसे होते हैं तो फिर गाड़ी भी अच्छी रख लेते हो और घर में कुछ दीवारों पे भी प्यारी चीजें आ जाती हैं.
Absolutely. Gents, what worries us? What do we want to see improve? And how can we, obviously Park Launch is a forum to gather international support. So I think, people ask about, I've seen some questions on whether the talent in the ecosystem, I don't think that's a worry. I think we have the right people, whether our government is enabling them, giving them the right skill set. That I think is being done by a lot of individuals, a lot of private individuals, institutions. There's a lag in the public sector. I think that needs to be addressed. Whether, in terms of the regulators as well, I think that needs to be addressed. But I think that also there's this mindset now, because venture capital and technology is becoming mainstream, that it's a quick means to make a certain amount of money. And I think that, people need to understand that this is not an easy lifestyle or it's fun, it's passionate because of the people that we're working with in the ecosystem. But it's not a joke. So again, I will refer back to, Muneeb and Heather. I mean, they're tireless and they're constantly working on new ideas without waiting for, other people's, support or intuition or anything else. So, I think that's a key takeaway.
I think, and Heather, you can let me know if you have other ideas. I mean, when I think about, what is the one thing that should happen, visa on arrival, an actual real visa on arrival, not this crap visa on arrival that we have that you've got to get spend days and days on permissions before you can get someone to travel on a visa on arrival. A visa on arrival for anyone to come to this country to experience the hospitality, to experience the intellect and the potential of this country. And so talent, I think there's a lot of raw talent. We cricket wala hisab, a lot of raw talent.
Exactly.
But the talent, the talent is not groomed and it doesn't have the discipline today. Not that they won't have the discipline. The same talent will go to the West or will go to the Gulf, and in a structure or disciplined environment, they will perform really well. So I think you know, the structure and the discipline of the talent is still missing and weak, and we are trying to figure out how we can you know, with how we can solve for that without attrition, because as soon as basically you train people, you also risk losing them because there isn't a lot of trained talent and capable talent in this country. So yeah, so I think I would say the top of the list is please let people come in and out of this country. Like it's such a hassle, you know, to solve for that first and foremost as a government.
Yeah, absolutely. Heather, your thoughts, or you're in deep thought yourself?
Yeah, no, I think Muneeb was reminding me of all the days when people were traveling to Pakistan, and I had, you know, arranging visas was such a pain in the butt for that. No, so I think, yeah, definitely getting sort of more best practices to come into the country, whether it's through people visiting. I remember when I used to have many old friends from Rock Internet come and visit Pakistan before Corona, and now it's a little tough. But I think you know, at Ailaaj, our full focus now that we're bringing in these batches of engineers and these product designers, we're realizing we have to put them through our own universities again. So we've launched our own 6-week product university course. We're launching our own 4-week university course for engineering, because some of the like Muneeb is calling it, discipline isn't there. The basic expectations around, you know, management of your work aren't there, and so they'll all learn it. Definitely, they'll all learn it. We just have to invest some time in doing that. But I think there's another sort of effort that I think our industry needs to do, especially when it comes to talent, and that's sort of helping everyone understand the value of ESOPs and what they can mean for you. Because I have encountered so many different companies and us internally where people are being awarded ESOPs and talent is turning around and saying, I don't care what this means. And I'm on this side of the table telling them, well, look, I benefited from this before in my life. You have to understand what this means for you. And they're not, whether it's they think that we've got a bias because we're trying to negotiate at that point in time. So I think the industry overall can help there and put some noise out there and help people feel more comfortable about ESOPs.
Yeah.
And you know, just to touch on basically Heather's point, I think like so some will get stock options if they're in leadership, and many will not. And for those who don't, let's recognize that the reason you're in a startup is to learn how to become nimble, to become efficient, and become hopefully an entrepreneur yourself. Right? Mm-hmm. Because that is something that you can never learn at a large organization where all the processes are set and structured, and you are you're a small piece of a cog in the wheel, just go get there, right? Short, small piece in a large thing. So and if you're unable to take that value of creation, structuring, reporting, getting into a communication cadence, whether it's in scorecards or weeklies, if you're unable to learn that in your 20s and 30s, I think it'll become very hard for you to do any of that in your 40s, right? Because then you're kind of set in your ways in many ways. So I think, it's a great time for Pakistan. And I think it's a great time for people who are just coming out of college. But I absolutely do not recommend you to go right out of college to say, I have a brilliant idea and I want to raise like $500,000. I think if you can get lucky and do it, great. But I would say go work at a startup that you, admire. But you can't just walk in. Like we have a lot of people apply and they're like, just give me a job. I'll do anything, right? Like you can't come in like that. Like you've got to come in and specifically identify what exactly you would do there and why you would be better than anybody else.
Yeah, Muneeb, absolutely. And I remember a great quote that drives me by Jack Ma: until you're 30, you should be with people or mentors that inspire you. And then after you're 30, you should be with doing the job that you enjoy and you've learned on a repetitive. So I think that's pivotal, because those learnings that one has are crucial to be with the right people who can train you. I think our populace generally, in terms of the youth, has the panache, the hunger to really strive for challenges. It's really the role models that they have are not enough, or the people who have set good examples are not really put on the platform that they should be. And I know that Pak Launch has done a great job in addressing that for us, for Pakistan. That more people should know about entrepreneurs like yourself, like Zia at Affinity, like the founders of some of our entities as well, who consider themselves to be entrepreneurs, not businessmen. And I think that's pivotal. Yeah, we do have a few comments, gents. I think perhaps we can address one or two before we sign off.
Sure.
There's admins asking, what can Pak Launch community do to support you? Can you share a story or something that resonates around a bad day? Okay.
Yeah. So let me answer the first one. What can the Pak Launch community do? Recommend great technical talent, not just people who can talk, right? Technical talent. And by technical, I don't just mean engineering. I also mean product, and I also mean finance, right? Or planning, right? Talent to us, because we are constantly looking, but it's so hard to find individual contributors who have leadership sort of capabilities, right? You'll find a lot of people who are generalists, but even if you are a generalist, I think if the community can recommend people that they've worked with that they think very highly of, that would be great. And a great way to recommend people is, our emails are simple. It's our first name dot our last name at our company name.com, right? That's really simple to,
You've outed everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, if not, it'll be like your first initial and your last name. There's 5-6 iterations. Try one of them. That's how I used to like cold kind of not call, but like generate leads to people. I would just assume they have one of 5 kinds of email. 4 will bounce back.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just do that.
You have to. Everyone has to, get exposed and try. So I think that's pivotal. And
yeah, and I think, Muneeb, you're looking for a lot of talent that's willing to move back to Pakistan. I think you've recently grown your team with talent that's moved back to Pakistan. So I think Pak Launch could definitely help you there in finding more people who have probably worked in the mobility space.
Many times people are like, yeah, why would you even look at talent from overseas? Like, what is so special in them? There are a couple of things, and I would recommend. One is, and by the way, talent that moves over from overseas from very large organizations is probably not the best talent for startups. Why? Because they're a cog in the wheel. They're not individual contributors per se, right? They're probably great at management, but you're not running businesses that require those layers and layers of management. So why does international talent matter? Pakistanis who've taken scholarships have been some of the best Pakistanis to get those scholarships, to be at the top educational institutes, to compete with all types of people around the world, to get the best jobs in the world, right? अब पाकिस्तान से दो टाइप के लोग जाते हैं ना, एक तो वैसे अमीरों के बच्चे जाते हैं और दूसरे वो होते हैं जो कि जिनके वालिदैन सरकार में काम करते हैं या कहीं ना कहीं आर्मी में काम करते हैं, कुछ ना कुछ प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज से, और उनके बच्चे आगे जो आर जस्ट, उनको पता है कि एजुकेशन इज आवर ओनली फ्यूचर, एंड सो उन्होंने स्कॉलरशिप्स लेके बाहर गए हैं, बाहर कुछ अर्सा गुजारा है, और they want to give back to the country and they come back and so they're just trained and groomed, and if we can find that talent within Pakistan, we'd love to. And so if there is some of that talent that is able to be, not just know how to manage people, but know how to individually create output, we would love to hire that talent.
Yeah, and I know we're all competing in some ways also for the best people, because people make businesses and people make everything. So, gents, I think our time is almost close to being finito. So I will check with admin if we should continue, or perhaps thank everyone.
I think we can just
signing
take the last few questions and then close it in the next 5 minutes or so.
Sure. Ali, do you want to perhaps read out any questions that we've missed, or any specific thing?
I think maybe the same question to Heather, right? What can Park Launch community do to support Heather?
So we're actually launching a really interesting product for people living in North America who have family members still living in Pakistan. I think, Salaal, if you could connect us to Park Launch. So when we launch this product, we'll probably create a wait list for the Park Launch community in North America. This will just be centered around people who are worried about their family members' healthcare in Pakistan, whether it's around their medication, whether it's around have they spoken to a doctor recently, what happened, all these sort of concerns that that people have. We'll probably be doing a beta for this very soon, and we'd love to get Park Launch's input on it.
Yeah, and just because I'm also competing with these guys on talent, I will
didn't go on the
also
talent
shout
route.
out. I will also shout out that Bykea will give anyone within Park Launch a referral fee for any talent that we hire. That I don't think these guys are gonna acknowledge to giving on the spot right now.
Yeah, I think we know where this goes. I think my friend Ali knows that we do not perhaps need to give a fee, and I should not need to say much. But obviously, again, like JS, yeah, we invested in these guys, so come work with us. I mean, I think we have the right people. We like working with the right people. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I just saw a message that there's some folks from Health Tap as part of the network and things like this. So, I mean, that's great. We'd love to learn from people, and we'd love to learn from people at Health Tap and that organization.
Zain Rahman, I'll refer me. You can hire me. Please reach out. Muneeb's already given our emails to the masses. They're all the same at all the three companies. So please ping us.
All right, we can. If there are no more questions, we can wrap it up.
All right, thanks, guys.
Awesome.
It was good to see everyone. I'm sure we'll get to see each other in person soon.
Yeah,
of course, that's
good.
Fascinating.
Good talking to you guys on video, and we'll be in touch. And thank you, Ali, for the opportunity to be on Park Launch. And all the
thank
great
you,
work
Park Launch, for setting this up, and Salaal for moderating. Really appreciate it.
I don't think I moderated too well, but thank you, gentlemen, for participating.
You did a great
Park
job.
Launch, for
it should be casual, it should be friendly, it should be a conversation, it should not sound like a regurgitated pitch, because I think people are getting sick and tired of that.
I'm sick and tired of hearing pitches.
Everyone's that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Good night.
You too, Park Launch. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good night.
Hafiz.
Ciao. Good afternoon.